everybody. Welcome to the Weird World Podcast. My name's Carrie.
I'm Dean.
And today, Dean, we are continuing
Part 2. That's what they call it.
monsters.
Modern monster myths. It's
That's
Triple
it.
M. I think it's all over social media. People, when you see Triple M, they mean this topic.
You mean M cubed?
Sure. I like that even better.
Okay.
So we started out with talking about vampires and we also covered werewolves. But the idea is that we're looking at modern monster myths in the sense that the legend, the folklore, the original story, the historical version of these monsters was something different than they are now. That modern storytellers have altered the facts, air quotes, and the truth, air quotes, and the history of monsters in some pretty dramatic ways. Vampire, tons of stuff about vampires, and
Yeah.
Bram Stoker played a very leading role. You know, with the mirror and the fangs and the kind of, well, he didn't invent, but kind of the sexy count, kind of sexy European nobleman kind of an idea.
Yep.
Suave and sophisticated. And with werewolves, it was mainly the appearance of werewolves. They were just wolves, just regular wolves of a man turning himself into a wolf, and the origin, how it's done of becoming a werewolf is that this man-like man-wolf and the werewolf because you were bitten by a werewolf. That's modern myth-making. Let's go back to the original. Actually,
Why?
I like it much better. I love the idea of a wolf man over just a wolf.
Yeah.
For sure. But it is quite a change. Today, we're going to start with Frankenstein's monster.
Okay.
Not Frankenstein, but Frankenstein's monster. And there's a lot of things that are surprisingly very different. That is a little bit different here because that dates back to a specific time in a specific book, 1818, the publication of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or Prometheus Unbound, her subtitle. They always had two titles. Why just give a book one title when you can give it two? Was the attitude back in the day. So the appearance, let's start with that. Frankenstein's monster looks like what? Go.
Green.
Mm-hmm.
He has a flat head.
Mhm.
He's very tall. He has jagged scars all over the place because he was sewn together. He has bolts in his neck.
Yes, I
For
love
some
the bolts.
strange reason.
Pretty much bolts in his neck.
Maybe to conduct the electricity part
Mhm.
to bring him back to life.
Or just to keep his head attached. I don't know, to be honest with you.
He always wore like big platform shoes.
Yes.
For some reason.
Well, I don't think they're supposed to be platform shoes, but they made him look taller. Okay, you said he's tall. How tall was he?
I don't know.
Well, how tall was Boris Karloff? He's about 6 feet tall. So even the platform shoes, he was a little over 6 feet
Yeah.
tall. So all those things you said are wrong.
Yeah.
Pretty much every single one of them. But yes, that's what the appearance is of Frankenstein. There's been some modern tellings, like Robert De Niro appeared in a movie called Frankenstein, which I think was called Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, that was much more true to the telling of the novel than the Frankenstein that sort of dominates most Frankenstein.
Have you read
tales. The novel?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I have not.
Yes. Very different. We'll get into that. It's not really that much at all like the movie.
Really?
This is a case where they did not stay true to the book very much at all.
Well,
Other than the fact that he made a person out of dead body parts. That's about it. So that really is almost it. So the green skin, you know what it was? It wasn't even intended to be green skin. They intended for the audience to see him as pale, like a corpse.
Yeah.
The green they painted him looked paler on black and white film stock of the time. So they had him wear greenish tinted makeup. And so people knew he was greenish because they saw him in full color in other situations. I think there probably been some stills that might have been in color as well at the time, but that wasn't the intent. They knew it was going to be black and white. They just wanted him to look kind of pale,
right?
Not green. So the whole green part, not in the novel, not even
Right.
intended to be in the original movie. That one to me is one of the most interesting ones because it wasn't even
because it doesn't make sense,
accidental.
and
No,
it doesn't make
Why is it
any
green?
sense. Yeah.
In Mary Shelley's novel, she described her character as having flowing black hair, quote, beautiful features, and yellowed skin, slightly dead, yellowy skin. Of course, none of those things survived. Mary Shelley's creature was 8 feet tall, not 6+.
Wow.
You're right. Frankenstein, Boris Karloff had some platform shoes, so he looked like maybe, 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah.
But the actor with him, I can't remember who played Dr. Frankenstein. I forget his name. Was probably 5'7" or something like that. So he looked very big. Mm-hmm. But in the book, he was supposed to be much bigger, about 8 feet tall. The reason was because he wanted to, that Dr. Frankenstein wanted to create something kind of superhuman, better than humans. So he made him bigger and stronger. Karloff was, of course, he looked big, but he was not nearly that tall at all. Again, these days we could make in CGI and do very easily make him that big. Or they could have just done,
tricks,
illusion, trick photography, but they didn't. Karl, of course, he has this slow, lumbering gait. His walk is very slow and kind of almost clumsy. Absolutely not. The creature in Mary Shelley's book was fast and agile. Again, better than a human.
Really?
Faster, stronger, more agile than any regular quote unquote human.
Was he dumb and could barely speak English?
Absolutely not. Could not be less. I'll get to that in just a second. But the creature was also, his birth was different. How is Frankenstein ultimately created in the book? I'm sorry, in the first movie.
Electricity from lightning.
And they kind of winch the platform, whatever, way up to the top to catch lightning as he's alive.
Yes.
And
and of course, there has to be a glass dome in the laboratory.
Sure. And a lightning pole or whatever that was. Absolutely not. In the book, he sort of finished the process of sewing everything together and get everything together as a human, and he sort of gasped into life, which is interesting because you would think it's so because galvanism was something that's popular at the time, but I don't think in the book she did not use the dramatic lightning effect that they did in the movie, and the stitching and stuff like that. He didn't have that noticeably in the book. But the biggest next one is his character, his personality. So you kind of hinted on it. He in the movie he speaks with these grunts. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that he has intelligible speech in the entire movie. Does he?
What movie are you talking about?
The original Frankenstein.
Oh, I've never seen it.
You've never seen the original Frankenstein?
No.
These are the kinds of times I question our marriage. Carrie, the original I'm kidding, by the way. The original, just for the record. You've never seen Frankenstein? Have you seen Dracula?
No.
What's happening? Have you seen The Wolfman?
Okay, when were these films made?
The early 1930s.
Okay, so why and when would I have watched
You don't have to be alive in the 1930s to have seen these classic horror movies.
Did you ever see the long trailer? Did you ever say, please don't eat the... You did not.
I have absolutely seen parts of it. Lucille Ballface.
And who else?
Ricky. Desi Arnaz. Ricky Ricardo. Ricardo.
Please don't eat the daisies.
Also Lucille Ball.
Nope.
Debbie Reynolds.
Nope.
Doris Day.
Nope. Yes, Doris Day.
Okay, face. Then I knew that.
Okay.
I just want to keep guessing. No. Okay, sorry. Please don't eat the daisies. That's compared to Frankenstein, Dracula.
But as small children watching old-timey movies, obviously 7-year-old me is going to pick something different than 7-year-old you.
I hate to break it to you, but you've had many, many years past that period to watch these wonderful classic.
Not my genre.
It just kept me more disgusted. So in the movie, though, he is depicted as grunts and groans and unintelligible speech. He was brilliant in the book.
Really?
He was not just intelligent, but he was calculating and, he talky. I mean, they had long stretches where Frankenstein, the scientist, Victor Frankenstein, was talking philosophy and the meaning of life and things like that with his creature.
I suppose it depends on whose brain they use, right?
Yes. Some people say he had the brain of Abby Normal, is well known.
That's the one I know.
Young Frankenstein. That's a phenomenal. But so I mean, long pages and pages of philosophical discourse between the scientist and his monster, who of course is never named. He's just Frankenstein's monster.
You know what? I should read the book.
It's a great book.
You want to know a notable difference that I attribute all the differences in her book versus the popular depictions? It's written by a woman.
Sure. I don't understand that at all, but why?
He's intelligent and, men make him into a gross, stupid,
If
dumb,
if the character was a
violent.
woman, I would agree with you, but the character's a man, so it doesn't make any sense. No, I don't think that's
Well,
it.
it's just the
Mm-mm. I don't know why it is. They probably didn't want to have. They may have not wanted. I don't know. I wish I knew that. I don't know that Boris Karloff could speak really good English at the time.
well.
He had a thick accent. I know that.
What happens in the book? Is it a horror book?
Not really.
Does he kill people? I mean,
yes, he does.
But on purpose or by
Yes.
mistake because he doesn't know his own strength?
Not only does he kill people on purpose, he kills people more purposeful than in the original version of the first movie. I'll tell you that in just a minute. So his character, though, was just a brilliant, philosophical, erudite person.
Mhm.
So he must have had the brain of someone who was educated,
Yeah.
well educated. The other thing, they also changed around some characters in the first book. I just said that the scientist's name was Victor Frankenstein because it was. They called him Henry Frankenstein in the first movie. And they seem to have just swapped that name with his best friend. His best friend in the book was named Henry. And Henry Frankenstein, the scientist, best friend, is named Victor in the movie.
Maybe somebody just got it wrong.
Who maybe?
Yeah.
Some screenwriter or some copywriter or some script supervisor or something like that. Just I don't know. Whoever wrote the original screenplay, maybe they got it wrong. I have no idea. Frankenstein was like the original mad scientist. He was crazy and energetic and kind of manic, and he screamed things like, "It's alive!" And now I know what it feels like to be God.
Yeah.
The Victor Frankenstein was gloomy and he was depressed. His whole thing, the whole book starts out, he creates this creature and the creature is too powerful and he fears it.
Yeah.
So he abandons his monster. He just says, "You're on your own.
Oh.
Get out of here. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here." He doesn't have a home. And he had promised him to make a mate. We'll talk about that in just 1 second. He reneges on that promise. I'll tell you in a second that reneging on that promise does have a terrible consequence when we get to how the story changed in other ways. But in terms of they just sort of change weirdly some of these characters. I'll finish with that is Igor. Igor was sort of created for the Frankenstein movies. There is no Igor in the book.
Yeah.
There is Victor Frankenstein. He works completely alone. In fact, he's working in secret. But actually, you get that from Young Frankenstein a little bit. I believe in Young Frankenstein, he's working in secret. And he's out in the German countryside.
Yeah,
he is working in secret. Victor Frankenstein in the original novel.
Yeah,
he doesn't have Igor to help him, his henchman or anything like that alone. And in the original movie, the first movie, he does have an assistant, but his name is Fritz. It's not Igor.
Oh. And is it Peter Lorre?
It's not Peter Lorre.
Oh,
no.
He seems like he should have been.
He should have. It's a guy named Dwight Fry, who I've never heard of. And it seems like there was a sinister person named Igor, Y-G-O-R, played by Bela Lugosi in a movie called Son of Frankenstein. Bela Lugosi, who played Dracula, he played a bad person named Igor in Son of Frankenstein, and a movie called The Ghost of Frankenstein. And so similar thing, that's where the idea that Igor belonged as the henchman of Dr. Frankenstein. And of course, there's the Bride of Frankenstein. Elsa Lanchester appears as the Bride of Frankenstein like a few minutes in the movie The Bride of Frankenstein. She's barely in it.
Wow.
And that was sort of inspired from the novel. But again, he promised to make a mate for his monster, his male monster. He'd make a woman for her.
Right.
He reneges on that because he worries that, hold on. What if they have babies and they create a whole race of superior beings? They'll take over the world. So that's when he reneges on it and kicks out Frankenstein and ditches him, his monster, and ditches him essentially.
Well, he's not a very smart scientist.
He really isn't.
Because all he had to do was make the bride with no ovaries or something like that.
Yeah, he
didn't get it.
He didn't think about that.
Yeah.
No. He probably worried that his monster was smart enough to give her ovaries. That's what I feel like that could have happened. Or he could have made the monster without balls. Yeah. I don't know. Either way, he didn't really think of these things. He wanted to be, anatomically correct. So in the novel, then because of this, he murders Dr. Frankenstein's fiance. So he asked a minute ago, did he? Yes, he did. He said, "Okay, you take away my life partner, I'll take away yours.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Basically, most of the novel is him avoiding his monster throughout Europe. And the monster roaming around Europe trying to find himself.
Yeah.
That's most of the novel. And they wind up in the Arctic ice, which again they don't do in the movie. They do that I think in the Robert De Niro version they do that. They stay true, but they wind up like near the north in the Arctic.
Yeah.
He's fled all the way up to the Arctic to try to escape his creature that he made.
In the Robert De Niro version, is he Frankenstein's monster?
Yes. Yeah.
What year was that made?
Oh, in the 90s, I want to say.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure. That's
I completely missed it.
Yeah. It was a it didn't do great. I think it was called Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Now they put that.
Yeah.
So in the movie, the bride is made in the second one. In
Yeah.
the sequel, they do make a bride. They bring her on at the last minute. However, she is scared shitless. He is ugly. He's green. He's got bolts. He got a flat head. He's got a scar on his entire, like they could pop his head off, put the brain in or take it out.
Yeah.
She's terrified. She shrieks at him. Very, very bad reaction. So this is at the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so the creature yells at Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, and I think his fiance, again, very different. In the book, he murdered the fiance. So he's like, get out. And he pulls some kind of lever that starts a fire that kills him, the creature, his bride, who hates him, who's just been alive for just a few minutes, and a person named Dr. Pretorius, who is like, he's a bad guy. He's the one in that second movie, Bride of Frankenstein, convinces Frankenstein to go ahead and make him a mate. He's a conniving bad guy, kind of a thing. So he kills. All those people die, and Dr. Frankenstein escapes with his fiancée, I believe, in the second one, in Bride of Frankenstein.
Right.
The story again is different too. They really kind of mess around with the plot. You can see already. There's no giant castle. There's no Igor. There's no angry mob that comes and storms the castle, or the windmill on fire. All of that, again, is just he regrets what he did. He doesn't make a bride. He runs away. Frankenstein, kills his fiancée. And I don't know if he killed a little girl like in the movie, and then chases him up to the Arctic where they both, I won't ruin it for you.
Oh, thanks.
I don't want to spoil, no spoiler alerts here. And most of the story is basically like that. They're separate from one another until the very end again. And in the movie version, in the classic first movie, he's this mad scientist. He doesn't regret anything, and they're attacked by a mob, and the downfall comes at the hands of the mob.
Yeah,
and that's so the story is different. The character's appearance is different. The character's nature is massively different. Again, Frankenstein monster, if canon is taken to be Mary Shelley's novel, which of course it has to be, is very different in the 20th and 21st century than the original. I have one last tidbit for you about Frankenstein. In James Whale, he's directed Frankenstein, the original movie. It was censored by many, many states. So they forced the original, they then bowdlerized the original, and they took out a couple of things. One of the things they took out was when Frankenstein murdered a little girl. Mm-hmm. They don't show it, but it's obvious and clear that he did. They're like playing with daisies, and he gets angry, and he kills a little girl because he's dumb. Yeah, the Frankenstein monster from Mary Shelley would have never done something like that. He killed much more purposefully. And another thing they took out was because the Dr. Frankenstein's, I know what it is like to be God. He said something to that effect. They took that out as considered sort of sacrilegious. Yeah. So they took those two things out. People forgot they took those out. And it was not until years later when some original footage was found that had been excised, and they put it back on all the prints. So you probably did, if you had watched it, if you were a normal American child and did watch Frankenstein like a normal, decent human being, you would have seen that scene and that line in the movie, because it was restored some years after the original was censored.
I do have a picture in my mind of Frankenstein's monster in a field with a little girl and daisies.
That's a very famous scene, and it is pretty unsettling because he murders a nice little girl.
I don't remember the murder
German
part.
Peasant girl. Well, again, it's implied. He like noises and he cries, and then it cuts to the town is terrified because the girl's body has been found.
Yeah.
So he does, but he does it through he just grows angry, you know.
Yeah, he doesn't do it on purpose.
No,
He,
not,
like
he
he
didn't
doesn't
mean to
know
hurt
his
her.
own strength.
Yeah,
kind
exactly.
of thing. Yeah,
exactly. Now we're going to turn to Ghost.
Okay.
Another one that predates 1818. This Ghost, of course,
Yeah.
went back not just thousands, it's probably until the dawn of human thought.
Yeah, maybe even before.
Yeah. So the key difference for Ghost from sort of yesterday to today is what they are, what they represent, and how we humans feel toward ghosts, feel about ghosts. All those things are very different now than they were, let's just say, a few hundred years ago and before.
Okay.
In most cases. So unlike modern ghosts, so what do we think of when we think about a ghost?
Well,
You think-
you mean me? Or
Yeah, most people, most Americans, let's say. You think about a ghost, what do you think about?
a dead person?
But more than that, what do they make you feel? Dread, fear. They're associated with uncanny things, noises you can't explain, things flitting that you don't see, very supernatural,
Yes.
paranormal, all those kinds of things. That's nothing like what ghosts were in the original Ghosts. Ghosts were basically your dead family members. They were your extended family. They were still in your family because their spirits still live with you, and you still honored them and thought about them and remembered them very consciously. So a ghost was essentially kin in the
Like your
olden days.
ancestors.
Yeah, but they weren't supernatural. They weren't creatures of dread. They weren't, you know, if you heard a uncanny sound and you got scared, oh, that's a ghost. I don't know who that ghost is. No, they were nothing like that at all. They were with you during rituals and during celebrations and things like that.
Is this from a specific culture, or
Most
was
cultures.
this kind of universal?
More or less universal. They tended
Okay.
like Chinese culture, the Asian cultures,
Yeah.
the European cultures, they tended to be
Because it sounds very much like Chinese
It does,
ancestors.
definitely.
And, yeah.
Chinese and Japanese have long
Yeah.
more of ghosts, especially and they were. This is pretty universal in Asian cultures, but also in many European cultures as well. They were really part of the world of the living. They had just passed on.
Mm-hmm.
They're literally part of your extended family. Like if you think of extended family, it's not just your aunts and uncles, your your dead grandparents and your dead aunts and uncles and things like that.
Okay.
Like you see some of the rituals. The Celtics had a thing called Samhain. In Mexico, they had Dia de los Muertos.
Yep.
And in India, they had something called the Bhut Chaturdashi. I hope I pronounced that right. And those were all festivals that were celebrated during harvest times. And that was when the veil between the worlds was at its thinnest. But that was also when you celebrated your ancestors and hoped they gave you a good harvest or some kind of a positive outcome.
Right.
And you appeal to your ancestors. But they also very often had to be assuaged some way, like remembered. Like if you didn't remember them correctly, they weren't going to hurt you necessarily, but bad things could befall you if you didn't properly remember your ancestors.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how far back you got to go?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, I could remember the ones I knew, but
Yeah, I'm not sure.
what about the ones before them?
It's bad. So people were very...
Because you could go back a very long time.
Yeah. And of course, remember, what's the difference between now and then, though? Especially in modern Western developed world versus the entire world back then. Death was massively more common. Everybody had lots of people in their family who were dead.
Yeah.
So honoring the dead was more important, really, in many ways. They were more ubiquitous. So the modern ghosts are completely uncorporeal. Basically, ghosts were they were just your ancestors, but they weren't this like transparent thing skulking around in the middle of the night through the hallways. They were never like that.
Did they think of them as ghosts?
They did. They did because they knew they were dead. They knew they weren't here.
Of course.
But you can talk to them and communicate with them and commune with them, especially during certain festivals in the year. But they weren't, I don't know, it's just hard to say. They weren't this idea of them as spectral creatures who you should be fearful of. They weren't like that at all.
They are a presence, and
yes.
you could communicate with them even if they're not communicating back.
Yes, for sure.
That's interesting.
Some people think this had something to do with like the scientific revolution and how you started looking at studying ghosts and understanding what they are, and that sort of made them be something spectral and paranormal and completely incorporeal and that kind of nature of it. It's a little bit over analysis, I think. Again, I think
I do too.
So Another way was they were restless, like in Mesopotamia, they're thought of restless spirits. You hear that word, that
Right.
phrase, restless spirit a
Yeah.
lot. They again, that restless spirits had to be assuaged. It wasn't going to hurt you or kill you, but it could be, you had like bad luck if you didn't do the right
Right.
things and the right rituals with these restless spirits, or
But-
somehow,
Yeah.
make good with them. Chinese had that.
But wait, were they restless spirits because they had like a sudden and violent death or something,
No.
and they didn't realize they were dead?
like the ritual wasn't correct or something like that. No, the whole idea where
okay.
like, I'm not really dead, or they're tied to a certain place. Sometimes they could be tied to a certain place, but almost now that's also a modern myth, is this tying them to like this castle where they died a violent death. That's fairly modern.
Okay, so it's like if your descendants didn't do your death right.
Yes. Do your ritual correctly and aren't remembering you right, and aren't including you in the annual rituals and things like that. That could be a restless spirit. Or it could be someone like maybe someone who committed suicide or something like that as well.
Sure.
The Chinese have something called the Hungry Ghost Festival, which they still have today, and that's dedicated to appeasing these restless spirits, these wandering souls and spirits.
Do you have to bring them food?
Probably. Maybe
Just
it's
'cause
not
they're
your
called
best
Hungry Ghosts?
food. I don't know. I mean,
Because that's like Dia de los Muertos. That's what you do. You go
Yeah.
to the cemetery and you bring
it's hungry being a corpse.
Yeah,
It's called the Hungry Ghost
all their
Festival. So
favorite foods.
given the name of it, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, yes, they do indeed bring them food and try to feed them, because they are indeed hungry ghosts. There's a story from the 12th century England called The Drummer of Tedworth. I've heard of this before. I was going to bring it up, but I'll just say it now. It was essentially like a poltergeist, if you stop and thinking about it, because there was a ghost that was constantly drumming a drum, and it drove the inhabitants of the house completely insane.
Yeah.
And it was thought to be some kind of a demonic thing, some possession. So it wasn't always great, but for the most part, they were considered your ancestors, and they meant you well, or at worst, they were restless spirits, and they had to be appeased. That was the way. It wasn't like it is now, where they're they're very scary, and they can very frequently can bring you harm or even kill you, which I think is cheating. I hate ghost stories where they can make something move.
Yeah,
That's
I
cheating.
know you do.
Yeah, it's just the thing.
I don't have a problem with it.
And ghosts went from being family then to being these supernatural entities. And that kind of started in the 18th and 19th centuries. Authors like Anne Radcliffe and M.R. James started writing these stories, these what we now think of maybe Gothic, where they had these castles and these old families living there, and there's vengeful, kind of nasty, mean spirits. Or they were psychological terror kind of stories, things like that. That's really transformed ghost into what we think of them now, at least here in the Western world. And again, ghosts started becoming scientific. People forget that in the early days, unlike today, of paranormal research, they meant it. They really were trying to figure out what was the truth, and they were genuine researchers. Not always, but very often they were. Even well into the 20th century, you had groups like that were really, truly, I think, genuinely and honestly investigating the supernatural to figure out if there's something there that could be explained scientifically. That's completely gone now. They're all, I don't know of any group like that is legitimate. They tend to just be grifter types, and they get TV shows and things like that, but they're scam artists essentially. I don't know if any of them are really, because we do have, they have those like a FLIR light, or they have some kind of a funny thing. Oh, it's registering a ghost, or oh, I just felt that. You feel the cold right in there. It's called a draft, dipshit. They know what they're doing. All these TV shows that are ghost hunters and stuff like that, they know. That's malice aforethought. They know what they're doing. They know they're frauds. So we don't have that, but we did for a long time. So ghosts became part of. You had to explain why we couldn't see them. So if you're going to explain them scientifically, you had to turn them into these paranormal, these supernatural beings, not these it's your family member who needs to be assuaged. So some people think that is part of that. I don't know if that's true. Again, I think people like to tell ghost stories because ghosts can be really scary.
Yeah.
Because you can't touch them, but they can mess around with you.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's what I think. But they kind of became disengaged from the natural world and became part of the supernatural world in this retelling of this modern myth about ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Tidbit for ghost. Do you want a tidbit?
Yeah.
Charles Dickens, he was,
Famously.
I think, the first person, Jacob Marley's ghost, and he described him as being transparent. And I think that's the first time you have a ghost overtly described as being. It may not be, but it's certainly an early time. He says he's transparent. Remember, he said he also had like all kinds of he was laden with, quote, cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel, end quote. He had him weighed down by all the things in life that kept him weighed down was kind of the idea, I think. Otherwise, he was the same. He dressed the same. His face was the same, but he was transparent and had his things on him. So you started seeing later on in that century ghosts becoming sort of translucent. And they think, some people have posited that the reason that's true, because even in the mid 19th century, I think it was, you had these optical shows and they like lantern slides and things like that. And that projected images, lit images, and that you could do this effect of translucence. I didn't read a lot about that, but that's one of the things I read. And that was being popularized around the time he wrote Christmas Carol and wrote about Jacob Marley's ghost. So some people think that's why. So in a sense then, and then of course later on in early filmmaking, even silent films, it was a fairly easy effect to have transparency. So it's possible that ghosts became almost universally transparent because it was an easy effect for early filmmakers to do it, and it became the norm.
Oh, funny.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I like the theory.
Yeah.
Next up, Carrie, zombies.
Oh.
Zombies are another thing that goes back a little ways, but maybe not as much as you think.
Yeah.
It's actually a very specific origin for zombies, but they are so radically different from what they are depicted now in a very not in a physical way, but also kind of a political way. Mm-hmm. So the original zombie is from Haitian. It's from Haiti specifically. It's tied up with the voodoo. Voodoo is nothing like what we think of voodoo. Voodoo was a belief system. It was a practice. It was not evil. You weren't if you did voodoo, you didn't do evil. You didn't stick people in with pins, and like in Gilligan's Island, a classic episode. So the idea of a zombie is invented in Haiti, and it was invented by Haitian folklore. And by the way, other places on other islands there is a voodoo and those kind of practices.
Right.
They don't have zombies.
Oh, really?
It was a Haitian thing,
okay.
and people think they know why. So the Haitian zombies were a regular person, a normal person. They died and they're resurrected by a bokor, who was like a sorcerer, like a magician.
Mm-hmm.
And you resurrected that dead body to make it do your will.
Right.
You did magical incantations and it no longer had an identity. It usually lost its memory from when it was alive and lost its associations with other people and loved ones. And it was your slave, essentially. That's a key word because, of course, Haiti comes from a history of slavery.
Yes.
They were the first slave country to overthrow in their case, the French colonial masters in 1804. And they had this fairly recent history of slavery when they invented this idea of the zombie. So it was to be forced to do someone else's bidding was particularly close to them, but particularly scary for them. So they invented zombieism by inventing this creature that was a slave, essentially. Some other parts of it, actually, you don't have to be dead. That's another way. The original zombie wasn't always dead. It could be a living person too. And that's why when modern researchers theorize about zombies, they have certain drugs that could put a real living person into a stupor and that's for sure nonsense. It's not true. It makes a great book for a certain, Harvard scholar, but it's not true.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You can't create a real zombie, but the zombie folklore did have living people as zombies as well. Again, but they were under the spell of that bokor, that sorcerer. And sometimes it was some kind of a magic potion, incantations to go along with it. But whatever they were, the body was no longer their own, and they were dead either in a metaphysical sense or in a literal sense. It didn't matter. It was irrelevant. They were dead and under the control of someone else. Yeah. So, and now, again, you can see easily how that would have an association with slavery and be born of that.
Yeah.
So George Romero comes along, and George Romero changes everything. He creates this creature that's shuffling, that's stupid. It's a true corpse, often in various stages of decomposition, and they are hungry for human flesh, especially later on brains. That was not George Romero. That was a later movie maker who did the brains thing. Now that has become completely ridiculous for zombies. But in 1968, he made Night of the Living Dead, and there was the zombies didn't have like an agenda. They didn't always want to just eat people, but they came after you and they would bite you. They turn you into a zombie. Another thing, we'll talk about that in just 1 second. But he's the one who had them have that shambling walk, and they're not very fast. You know, you can lop their head off. If there's a lot of them, you might get killed. But this is 1 or 2, you're probably going to win.
Yeah,
you can outrun it.
Yeah,
you can chop its head off.
You just turn around and run.
Yeah, that's why in the original movie, they mostly killed when the humans, the living person, was badly outnumbered. As I just alluded to, brain eating actually didn't come until 1985. A movie called The Return of the Living Dead was the first movie to show.
1985?
1985.
Seriously?
According to this source, was the first movie that showed, and it was more of a kind of a
Wow.
comedy horror movie that showed zombies lusting after brains and trying to eat brains. That's become nearly universal now. But there's been other changes to the zombies too, right? 28 Days Later made them fast and they're not stiff. They're not just these lumbering things. They were dangerous to you.
And that was it a virus?
Yes,
Yeah.
that was a virus. So you have, and of course that's the biggest one there. You do have this idea that zombies are made from biting you, and it causes some kind of contagion that makes new zombies. When the original Haitian folklore, nothing of that, of course, whatsoever. But so zombies have continued to change now. They are very often shown, more recently, they've been shown more human. Like in the Korean movie Train to Busan, they're not that, they look pretty close to human.
Yeah.
They're hard to, they're not like, skin falling off, brain, kind of a thing like that. And of course, even more recently, you have one of your favorite shows, the Santa Clarita Diet, or this old TV show called iZombie, where they could pass. When they wear makeup or something like that, and they're otherwise able to kind of control their thirst for brains, their hunger for brains. But if they're able to control that, they can pass as humans. That's something very new. So you see, even from George Romero's zombie, it was very different from original Haitian zombies, and now zombies are in turn continuing to evolve.
Yeah.
George Romero's movie, though, really was, it did kind of set the stage for everything. But one of the things it didn't set the stage for was the word zombie. He never uses the word zombie in that movie. Yeah. Isn't that weird? Sometimes I think they might be called ghouls or something like that, but it's just these dead things are coming after and attacking them in a farmhouse in Pennsylvania. He never uses the word zombie. I was shocked by that. I assumed he did. They were recognized as zombies, I think, at the time, and people called them zombies. And I think he called them zombies in his first sequel, but not in the first one. And of course, he set, as I mentioned, he set up a creature that's very different from the Haitian folklore. Right. Most people think he was actually inspired, George Romero, more by like vampires, like in I Am Legend, which later became made in a first movie with Charlton Heston called Omega Man, and then later a Will Smith movie called I Am Legend, and a very good book. The book is really better than the movies. It almost always is, but this is true. Right. And those were actually vampires. And like in I Am Legend, there's one human left. Everybody else is a vampire, not a zombie. Yeah. And so George Romero was really funking off of that when he made Night of the Living Dead, although those vampires were very powerful, so it's hard to say. I don't know. He may have had the shuffling and the lumbering just because that was. If you have them when you have zombies be fast and agile, humans are in trouble. Yeah, pretty big. So it's hard. That may have been why you wouldn't have this fear of having all these creatures come at you, and you, these 3 or 4 people in that farmhouse, are they want to kill them. Yeah. So that's my guess. I don't know. But he kind of blended the idea of vampires, their thirst for humans, and the mindlessness of the zombie, and created this great creature. In one of his sequels called Dawn of the Dead, he brilliantly, I think, has his survivors, they get holed up in a shopping mall, and these zombies are pounding on the glass that lock the shopping malls, like, let us in, let us in. That was a critique of consumerism. Yeah. It's brilliant, actually, if you think about it. It's like, not only was it a prison, it was a prison for the people in there. You're trapped within consumerism, even if you're conscious about it. But it's also this attraction of these mindless zombies all out there going buy, and who feed consumerism. They're like literally zombies. Let us into this palace of retail, this palace of consumerism. So pretty brilliant. But anyway, gone was the slavery thing. Gone. It was kind of replaced by consumerism, and zombies are made by contagion of some sort, not by the will of a sorcerer. and you don't even have to be dead. So zombies, the modern myth of the zombie monster is very different than the original.
Yeah.
Our last monster is witches. Carrie, you a big fan of witches?
As a matter of fact, I am.
What 21st century female who's not a trad wife is not a fan
I
of witches
know.
right now these
and
days?
I kind of take issue with you calling them monsters.
Well, I'm using that. There's the whole point of alliteration. I'm not going to lie. That was a big. I don't want to say just modern creatures. So
I know.
I'm going to apologize to you and all witch fans out
Thank
there.
you.
But they are very different
Mhm.
than what they were.
Yes,
The biggest one,
obviously.
obviously, is that witches were bad. They were evil.
Yes.
They did bad things and nothing but that. Hundreds of years, witches you're a criminal. If you're a witch, people forget that. There's actually a lot of myths. There's a lot to unpack. I won't unpack it all. But the idea of witchcraft was essentially in the sense, it was not thought of as this. I mean, it was thought of as you're dealing with these bad supernatural things and you're doing things that are not in line with our religious world. But you're a criminal. A lot of criminals were hung, or they weren't necessarily burned at the stake, and a lot of witches were not burned at the stake. No
Yeah.
witch in the English-speaking world was ever burned at the stake. They were almost always hung.
But are you talking real life? They were criminals.
They were thought of as criminal.
Or
Witchcraft
are
is
you-
thought of as a crime, like
Okay.
murder
Okay.
or thievery. Oh, you practice witchcraft? You're a criminal. We're going
Okay.
to prosecute you for that crime. And of course,
But you don't mean it in the true sense
No, I
of
mean,
what you think is a criminal.
in the legal way, it was thought of.
Okay,
at
got
the
it,
time.
got it.
And
Okay.
you committed witchcraft was like committing a serious criminal offense,
Okay.
and there were consequences for
Right.
that. And that
Yes.
consequence back in those days, the consequence was usually death.
Mhm.
So basically, the witch was someone who made a pact with the devil, and that gave them these powers that they used for bad
Yeah.
things. And they were feared by people because they were made powerful by the worst possible means. They were often thought as of deviants and marginal
Yeah.
people, and it was one of the worst crimes you could commit was
Sure.
practicing a witchcraft. They were so just they destroyed crops. They made your baby die. They never had children themselves. Sometimes they ate babies, as a
Mhm.
matter of fact. They really were so different than the
Yes.
modern witch. They were the worst people in the world. Were witches, unequivocally negative. A woman named Rachel Christ, and her name is Christ, by the way, Rachel Christ Doan. She's the education director at the Salem Witch Museum, and she's a researcher into witchcraft, especially the
Mhm.
Salem stuff. She has I read an interview with her, and she says that, again, the word witch was used to describe a criminal offense and dabbling with the devil. But it was about 1400 or so, and not until about 1400 or so, we started having these witch trials. Into the 1400s, they started having these witch trials. And you might think, I don't know if I'm not going to ascribe this belief to her, but that's about when, it's around the time. I mean, Christian church was always, the Catholic church is still in force. There's no Protestant church yet. Was any kind of practice that was considered at odds with Catholicism was not just frowned upon, but often stomped upon. But it really got heightened
Yeah.
around this time. There is the Spanish Inquisition
Mhm.
is formed sometime around this time, and really there were some even some Christian, but some different variants of Christianity that were shockingly popular in the 1100s and 1200s and 1300s and on, that the Catholic Church was trying to stomp out and have just one type of Christianity be relevant in Europe and then the rest of the world that they controlled.
Mhm.
So so it is around in the 1400s that you start to have these witch trials. And so it kind of turned from some of those people they thought were like folk religious practices or folk medicine or things like
Right.
that. And they turn that into, if you do that, you're a devil
Yes.
worshiper. You're in league with the devil. And then that, of course, in turn became today's cute kind of supernatural creature. But at the time, again, it may have been a situation where old pagan beliefs or old folk beliefs were trying to really be stomped on by the Christian church.
So it's really non-conforming.
Yes.
Usually a woman.
They were usually
So
outsiders.
It was very patriarchy. Very
Sure, yes, but not as much as you think. Less than you might think.
really.
Plenty of male witches.
Yeah.
Tons of them. But yes, they were often these on the margins of society. They were outsiders. They were poor women who lived alone. Maybe they were widowed or they never got married.
Yeah.
And often like if you were a homeless or lived in a hovel woman and you were argumentative and your neighbors didn't like you, you had a decent shot of being claimed as a witch. Or especially women who fought with their husbands were in danger or were overbearing or something like, or thought to be that, were in trouble. The first 3 people who were accused in 1692 at Salem was Sarah Good. She was a beggar who was thought of as just obnoxious and aggressive, kind of almost like an aggressive panhandler of the 17th century. Sarah Osborne, she was a woman, and she had a scandal in her past, and she had not been going to church anymore lately. It turned out it was because she was sick, but they thought, oh, she's fallen away.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, of course, Tituba, the slave, who was a slave and black, and she was from the West Indies. So they were 3 socially outside females who has in the middle one had some kind of a scandal. Now, of course, today you have good witches. Witches are mostly, for the most part, have been completely switched to being positive characters rather than negative characters. But which is just
feminism and women reclaiming,
for the most part, yeah. But also, how about the green skin though? What does that come from? I have no idea.
Fairy tales. I mean,
I guess I'm not even sure. The broomsticks, they ride on broomsticks and things like that. And now, of course, you have sexy witch costumes all over Halloween, which I'm not opposed to. And they become really kind of iconic pulp culture creatures and characters in the modern world. Turns out one of the ways that this turn started was by one of your favorite authors, L. Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz. Because what does he do? What does he have in The Wizard of Oz? He has 2 good witches. Overtly, one of them even goddamn called the Good Witch.
Yeah.
Glinda the Good Witch, right?
Who's the other good witch?
The Good Witch of the North. The Witch of the North.
Oh.
So they have 2 good witches. That was unheard of at the time, especially in this is a book for kids.
Yeah.
He was the first, on a major way, he was the first to have good witches as positive characters in a piece of art that was widespread.
Yeah.
So that was, and it turns out his mother-in-law was a famous and very effective feminist.
Oh.
She was an abolitionist and a very, very, she wrote books.
Yeah.
And was kind of, for her time, extremely modern theories of feminism at the time. So,
that's interesting.
So maybe he was influenced from her. And then, of course, you have Bewitched, and things like that. And suddenly, witches are almost universally.
And there were movies. Good. There's one movie that I can think of before Bewitched with I'm sure she was a famous actress. I don't remember her name, Veronica Lake or somebody like that. Where
I should have looked more up, but there's been plenty of depictions.
That was black and white.
Yeah,
and
there's of course your favorite movie with the Bette Midler and
Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus, all very good characters. And when they have an origin story that they were very much wronged. I forget.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they were. It's not their fault. And of course, you're now resurrecting one of the bad witches from Wizard of Oz and turning her into a very motivated reason for her to go quote unquote evil and become a bad witch. So
she's 100% justified.
Damn right she is.
Wicked. We're talking about Wicked.
Yeah. And what's her name again?
Elphaba.
Yeah.
Elphaba.
One of the worst names in the history of fiction.
Yeah.
There's witches have kind of become completely reclaimed as good. I can't emphasize enough. They were the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
In the original. So modern. We're talking about modern monster myths. That's one of the biggest changes. 180 degrees change. So all these things have become kind of, if they were evil, they're now either good or at least sometimes good.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Because we have good vampires.
Yeah. We have lots of
good werewolves. And
a couple tidbits for witches. Broomsticks. This is, again, I believe these are quotes from the researcher I just mentioned who works for the Salem Museum. She says that, quote, during the early modern period of witch trials, it was believed by many, not all, that witches could fly. In Salem, witches were said to ride on sticks or poles. In other places, you have them riding backwards on a goat or on a pitchfork or even just nothing. They're just flying.
Yeah.
So the idea of a broomstick being universally is relatively modern.
Yeah.
It's become a stereotype. Now, black cats... Witches did have familiars. They weren't. They could be anything. They snakes, dogs, birds, whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes they were cats, but they didn't have to be cats. Sometimes they're crazy animals, like some creature with lots of heads and things like that. But for whatever reason, cats became the stereotype, especially black cats. It's not clear why. And of course, green skin. We don't know, but of course, that's likely. That was the 1939 version of Wizard of Oz. They gave her green skin. They gave that witch green skin. Otherwise, that was not. That was an invention of the movie, I believe. That was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have not read the Wizard of Oz books. Have you read the Wizard of Oz books?
Not a little bit, but not any that had.
Do you remember if they had green skin?
I was going to say not any that had the Wicked Witch of the.
Oh, you haven't read
East
that
and
one?
West, yeah.
Oh, really? Isn't that the first one, the Wizard of Oz?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. There was a bunch of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the Land of Oz.
Oh, okay. He was famous. Baum was famous for like, God, I don't want to write these goddamn books anymore, but I can't. Everything else he did flopped miserably. So if he wanted to maintain his lifestyle because they made him wealthy, he had to write more books. Did he write like 9? He wrote a lot.
Oh, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one that I had and read, it was a little boy. It wasn't even Dorothy.
Really?
It was Pip. It was a little boy.
He just invent things in that took place in that universe.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to end with some myths about witches. So I'm going to end a show about myths with more myths.
Okay.
Witches were burned at the stake, right?
I mean, I'm going to say no.
Yeah, you should say no for all of these. So in England, anyway, in the American colonies, they were always hanged. One guy was pressed, but they were never burned, and not in every place where they burned. And it wasn't even the norm, even in like France and Germany, where there are lots of witch trials. It wasn't the norm.
Thank
to always
God.
burn them. They did. Don't get me wrong. In other parts of Europe, they did indeed burn them, but not in the English-speaking world, and it wasn't universal. Some people, how many witches do you think died during the witch persecutions that took place from, say, early 1400s all the way up until, shockingly, the last one was 1782
here in America?
Switzerland.
Oh.
No, in the world.
Worldwide?
Let's say Europe. Europe
I think it's a lot less than we think.
What do you, just give me a number.
I'm going to say
Asking for a number.
25.
25 people total. 25 witches?
Yeah.
Okay, you're off.
Oh.
Most people think it's millions.
Oh, I wouldn't have thought it was millions, but
30,000 to 60,000.
Oh.
So 25? Carrie, more than that were killed in Salem, I believe. It was like 20 or something killed in Salem.
I figured it was going to be shockingly low. But...
Okay. You are the worst Price White player ever. I can say 26 and I've just easily won.
Hey,
so
I was closest without going over.
No, you weren't.
I'm the only one. So
okay,
yes, I was.
That's not fair. So 30,000, 60,000, somewhere in the middle, that's likely. So 40, 50,000. It's insane.
What are you talking about?
It's crazy. It was slaughter. It was horrific.
Oh,
but
okay.
It's not, a lot of people think it's hundreds of thousands or even millions were killed.
I mean, there weren't that many people.
No. I want to do that story too, by the way. It's a story about Anna Goldie. She was the last person killed for being a witch in 1782 in Switzerland. So I want to do that story maybe one of these days. I'll have to take a look and see if it's interesting enough. Witches were always, if you accuse someone of being a witch, they were dust. They were ended. You almost never would win that court case.
It was a heads I win, tails you lose thing, right? Did they?
Nope. Absolutely not. The vast majority of witches were acquitted of accusations of witchcraft.
Really?
Probably something like 75%. In England, at least, the best estimate is about 25% were found guilty. The vast majority. And it's kind of a little bit better than you might think. The main reason they were usually not convicted is because a lot of people just thought, this is so stupid. There's no such thing as witchcraft. This is bullshit.
Really?
These witch finders are just making money off of this. You had these terrible witch trials, like in Pendleton and places like that, where you did have multiple witches that were burned or not burned, but rather were found guilty and were killed. But it was not the norm. Most accusations ended in acquittal. I don't have the data for Europe. It was probably worse than that, but still, you could have a trial. They had trials. They had lawyers. They had rules of evidence, and it wasn't just an automatic thing. So it was not quite as bad as you think.
Seems like it was always automatic.
It does.
It was the whole witch test. If you float, you're a witch. If you drown, I guess you're not, but you're dead. So
millions. The Spanish Inquisition killed 2 witches directly. And now they made accusations, but they were mostly going after people who were just generally religiously against the church, or they felt were against the church, and doing something that the church didn't like. It wasn't usually witchcraft. That's also kind of a myth.
So they killed a whole bunch of people, but
they sure
only
did.
2
only
because
2
they
directly
were
because
witches.
you're witches. Yep. Millions and millions of people were rounded up and for being witches. That's kind of the idea. Again, the actual number is much smaller. They killed 30 to 60,000. Certainly tens of thousands more were accused. In England, though, only about 2,000 people were ever accused of witchcraft. And again, most of the time they were acquitted.
Wow.
Yeah. All Christian churches were involved in persecuting witches? No. Catholics were and Protestants were. The Eastern Orthodox churches, the Russian Orthodox, the Eastern Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, etc., there was almost no witch hunting in those lands at the time. Yeah.
Go ahead. What about non-Christian religions?
There's witchcraft in all kinds of societies, but I don't know that any other place had this kind of what we think of as hundreds of years of witch hunts, during which time tens of thousands of people were killed for being witches. I don't know of any historical case much like that.
Yeah.
King James he was the new king who followed Elizabeth, and he was thought, because he was the king during the witchcraft of Pendleton that killed a lot of people, and he was sort of an instigator of that. So the history, or the myth, is that he was this super, super attuned to witches. He really wasn't. That was about, actually more people died under Elizabeth than did under his reign for witchcraft in England.
Really?
Yeah. He wasn't, he wasn't great. He still believed it, and bad things happened, but it was kind of on the wane during his rule.
So are you saying Queen Elizabeth believed in witches?
She let it happen during her reign.
Or was it
there were witch trials during her reign?
Convenient way to get rid of people, enemies, or people that...
My guess is you don't want to, fine. Those villagers are killing some other villager, whatevs.
Okay.
I don't know that for a fact, but and I think she did say things like whatevs, by the way. I think she invented the word whatevs. She also invented the word bitchin'.
Because as we know, she's my favorite queen.
She's your favorite queen, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. She did some not great things.
Well, okay.
Well, I know. All royalty do.
Yes.
So, two more. Witches was always about hunting women and anti-women. I've kind of already given that away. That was absolutely not true. A lot of the time they were women. Women were certainly more vulnerable, for sure.
Well, yes.
But it was not. The majority of, like in England, the majority of those accused were women, but not an overwhelming majority.
Well, were the majority of men that were accused gay men?
No. Maybe these days, but no, not then. In Scandinavian countries, actually a slight majority of the accused were men.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I know. So it wasn't just, witches could always be men. Men could always be witches. There's never a time where it's always going to be women. It wasn't quite so gender specific as I think the modern people think. Modern people think it was all a big anti-woman, anti-feminist thing. It was much more religious than it was gender politics. Yeah. Much more so. And last thing, that witches, all these witches were just like midwives and herbalists out there in the countryside. Absolutely not true. Midwifery was completely accepted. In fact, there were midwives who helped the witch finders by inspecting the women for those, signs of being a witch.
Like the third boob and all that kind of stuff.
Things like that. So absolutely not true. It wasn't like, that is kind of a modern thing. It's like, it was these super feminine who were, out there doing these good things. Absolutely fundamentally not true. Again, to overemphasize it, it was a religious thing and not more than anything else. And yes, more women were accused and convicted, but that's because they were obviously more likely to be politically powerless. Yeah. And, more likely to be kind of on the fringes of society. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't. They didn't go after the midwives and the herbalists. That's not true. I'm sorry. I know it's convenient, but it's not true. So those are some witch myths. And that's it, Carrie.
Well, thanks.
I hope you enjoyed modern monster myths, even though the word monster is considered a little pejorative, and Carrie's a little upset about that. At least with respect to witches. Do you agree if the other ones are monsters?
Well, yeah.
Zombies, werewolves. I think so too. Yeah. We had to talk about witches.
I think of monsters more of being not human.
Interesting. That's fair.
So,
well, none of these are really truly human, are they?
Well, a lot of them do start out.
They start out as human, but they're not human anymore. Or at least they're not always.
I don't think you lose your humanity because you die.
If you become a vampire, I don't think you consider human anymore.
Oh, I do.
No. Okay. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed Modern Monster Myths. Until next time.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.